In this video, we're going to focus on creating a heat map chart like this here. And maybe if you've seen this on GitHub, you probably recognize this. We have these different colors indicating how many commitments has been created or how many items has been committed into a project. And this is quite interesting because with this, you can do a lot. And Chartjs allows you to do this one, but we're going to use a special plugin. I'm going to give you a quick warning as well. This will be a lengthy video and it's quite challenging, but very satisfying once you see this. So let's start with this. In this video, we're going to explore how to create a heat map chart like Github Commit with the Matrix Chart plugin in Chart.js. And this will be a quite interesting topic, but it will have a lot of code in here, so you have to follow along carefully. So alright, so what we're going to do is now we're going to start working on that, and to do that we need to do some preparation, and secondly we need to get our default code ready. So first of all, we go to chartjs3.com getting started, and in this link here we're going to grab the default code here immediately. So we're going to copy all of this. Once we copy this, put it in here, and then I will paste the code in here and then move the title in there. Alright. So the next thing what I want to do, if we save this, and next, by the way, if you do not understand what this code does, please check out this video here. So you can see here now our chart is working, but we don't want a bar chart, we're going to create a matrix chart. So basically it's called a matrix chart, but it is in essence a heat map showing how much activity is happening on a certain point of time. So what we're going to do now is the next thing is basically this here, because this is what we're going to create. And what we need here is the official code of this one. To get this, I highly recommend you to go to jsdeliver.com and then get the Chart.js metrics link. So in here you can see the latest version as of now, it is 1.1.0. So I'm going to get this one, and here I select the HTML, and once I get this, I go and paste this in here just below here. Why in here? Because this must be loaded first before this one can start, because this is dependent on whatever is in here. Alright, once we did this, we need to do something else because we're going to work with dates. So we need to have the dates adapter plugin in or JavaScript here as well. So how can you find this one? Well, basically, if you go here to chartjs.org, and then you can go here to sample. Oh, sorry, not in sample. We have to go to the ecosystem awesome. And once you do this, you see here, we get this. You will see the sunglasses here related to the charts. And then we're looking here for a specific one. We need to look the adapters. Select on this. You can see here the options. Very important here. Don't use moment. In this case, this matrix or matrix chart plugin uses the date-fns. So make sure you use this one. Moments is, by the way, deprecated. It's not being updated anymore. So Chartjs has stopped using it as well. So don't use that one. Of all the options, don't use that one. Alright? So use this one here. And then what we're going to grab here is basically, if we scroll down here, you will see here some information about the link. That's the one we need here. So we're going to copy this bundle. We can see here Chartjs adapter -date-fns. Alright, copy this. So once we have this, put it in here, but make sure it is loaded before we have the chart matrix JavaScript library. Alright, so this one depends on this, or else it will not work. Alright, so now we have the basics here. This is really just straightforward, just getting the right code. So now what I want to do is, because we have to work with this, I want to adjust already the shape of the chart, because if you look really carefully here already, let's see, where is that specific item? That's the one. You can see this is a very rectangular shape. It's not anymore a square, it's quite long and narrow in height. So the width is quite long. So what I'm going to do already here is, we're going to change this. We say your width, and then we say your height, 100 pixels should be enough. And if you refresh here, you can see the shape here is in the card, but the chart, of course, is not. So what we're going to do now is we're going to break the card with the chart shape, because the chart has a default setting here in the options. So we're going to do this here, and basically in here, I'm going to say here, maintain aspect ratio, and then we say here false, comma. If I save this and refresh, now you can see we have this here. Alright, so now we're ready here with the basics. Now let's start to work really with all the hard parts. And basically what I'm doing here is this one here. If we go here into the samples, you will grab here the on time scale, and basically we're going to copy this one with all of this code here. Although I don't like all of the sample code here because they're using utils here, and this gives you errors if you don't understand what the utils does and how to activate them. And I don't like it because you can see here the utils, but it says here as well the utils are helper functions, and these helper functions, you can see here, these functions are subject to change, including but not limited to breaking changes without prior notice. Don't use this. This is basically done for Chartjs itself. Although I'm not really in favor of this because it shows a demo. And if you're a starter, you don't understand how to use this, you think you need this, and then if they're breaking changes, you get all these weird responses. It's very hard to understand this. So we're going to start really from scratch, so it's easy for you to follow. It will take a bit longer, so you have to pay attention here now. Alright, so the first thing what we need to do is, if you're going to create a matrix chart, like GitHub or the heat map chart, we need, let's say for 1 year, those squares that we're going to use. So we're going to get some data. And what I'm going to do is we're going to use JavaScript for the data here. So in here, we're going to create here, let's say here the date, well, this could be the date settings or the date details. And then in here, we're going to create a function. And this function is called, and just a quick note here, some of these things I'm not 100% familiar yet with. And the reason why is the metrics chart or the matrix chart doesn't have nice documentation as of now. It's still in development. So some parts you just have to copy, and I don't know yet why certain things work. However, the result of it is absolutely phenomenal. Alright, so we say here the ISO day of the week. That's our function name, and I say here the parameter will be the daytime, or basically the day. So or the date, DT, I guess. So we say let, and then here WD, which is the weekday, and then we say the date, and then we say a dot get day, and then we want to grab exactly certain day here. And basically what we want here is get any of the days which are between 0 and 6, meaning 0 means starting from Sunday. Alright. So if you have number 1, it would be starting from Monday. So we will assume that here one option, and then what we're going to do is here we're going to change this. We say here equals WD plus 6, and then we have a percentage, and then 7 plus 1. Basically here this would be just to validate, make it to 1 till 7. So we have a starting week will be Monday. Alright, so we have this here. So then what we want to do is here, we want to return the value. And the returning value, what we want is single quotation. Here, make sure it's single quotation plus. So basically returns nothing plus WD. Alright, which would be whatever the weekday is. So there's some space here between, or blanks. Alright. And once we have this here, semicolon, slash, slash. So this is basically a string. Well, I'm just saying slash, slash, but this is a comment, this is my comment, I guess. String, so it gets parsed, alright? So we need to convert this to make it parsed clearly. Alright, so now we have this function here. That function is really designed to start working with the next part here, which is where we're going to use the generate date to loop through the entire date, and then we use all of these commands in here. So we say here the following. Let's call this the setup of the date. And then here, we're going to say here function, and then we say generate the data. And this here will be the loop of 365. So we're going to make sure that here will be 365 days, or to be honest, it's more like squares that we want to show. So all these squares of activity. And we're going to make it random. So if you remember with GitHub, there's like commits. The more commits on that specific day, the darker the color it is. So we have to get some random data in here. So we're going to work on that. So we say the following. We say constant today equals the new date. Make sure it's a new space date. And then this new date it's blank. All right, so this is the date object, and there needs to be d, of course, and then we say a constant today equals new date, and then we say dot get full year. And here, basically, the get full year, what we want to do here is basically to convert. When we have here the certain information, we want to make sure that this now starts to work on, because we want to have dates for 365, that it's for 1 year straight. So, but let me just make this first, and then I can explain this. Then we say here get month, and then we say here comma d dot get date. All right, and then comma 0, comma 0, comma 0, and comma 0. All right, so what's happening here? So basically, we're going to grab this date here. We're going to extract this date. We want to make sure once we have this date, we want to break it down. We want to get the year. We want to get the month. We want to get the specific date. And then here, this is related to time. Hours, minutes, seconds, and milliseconds here. So we just want to put them on 0, 0, 0. This is not important. So they will be at midnight, AM, 12 AM, starting point. All right. So what we're going to do here, now we say const, now we say data, and this const data will be, of course, our array. So in here, now we can start to build our array. And what we want to make sure is that there's an ending date on this as well. So we have an ending date. And what will be the ending date? Well, let's say today. We want to grab today's date will be the ending date. So this will eventually be, we're going back 365 days. So we are going 1 year back. And that's, of course, makes sense because this type of chart records activity per day in history, basically, or we're going back in time. All right, with the maximum tracking would be today. It cannot predict the future. All right, so we have this now. Now we can say here let dt, which is the item that we have. We're going to grab this one. That's basically this one here eventually, and then we say here the following. We say here new, and then we say here date, which is new date dot set date, then here end dot get date minus 365. Basically, we're going to grab the date, and then we're going to create a new date out of it, and then we are going to loop through this eventually with minus 65, but we basically here we're going to deduct it, so we have at least for 365 days. So once we have this, what we're going to do here now is a while to loop through this stuff. Say while dt, this is the starting point basically, so because we deduct this starting point here, then we say here loop through this, and end. End will be today compared to the first day of the year, minus 365. So once we have this here now we're going to create the data. We say constant ISO equals dt, because what we want to do is we want to make sure that this is in the date format, so Chartjs can read it, and that's why we also have this specific date FNS item here, or library, just to make sure that it reads the date. And then we say here this to ISO string, so we make it a string, but then it says date string, so it can be read, and then sub string 0, 10. All right, so I'm not sure exactly how long the thing is, but eventually we'll cut it out with 10 characters maximum. All right, so now we have this, and then we say data dot push. So we're going to push it into the array, and the data array, that's this one here, that's where we're going to push it. All right, so we have this here, and then here, what are we going to push? Well, we're going to push basically 4 values. We need the x value, and the x value will be the ISO, which is this specific item here, comma. Then we have the y value, and the y value will eventually be the vertical, basically will be the, is that the vertical? Yes, that's the vertical scale here, basically the y scale, where you can calculate. And what we want to do is we want to do it on ISO day of week, meaning that we will have 7 items on the scale from Monday up to Sunday, comma, and then we have D for the day, will be again ISO, and then comma, we will have the V value, and this will be probably like the commits, how many commits are there. I'm going to put in here a random value, and this is basically copied directly from the matrix chart website as well. There they have the random. This is just the formula from them, as this is quite tough to understand. However, it doesn't matter so much. We have this now here. We're going to break it down step by step. The more we practice this, and for me as well, this is my practice as well, to really get deeper into this. So then once we have this here, all right, then we say here dt equals new date, and then we will say here dt dot set the date, and the set date will be dt dot get date plus 1. Alright, so we have this plus 1 here. So now we have all of this. We have the date. We set the date specifically. What's the date here? Plus 1. This is probably here related to this here. Alright, so now we have this here. Once we have this, we can probably do a good one is to have a console.log just to see what we're going to get here. We want to log out the data. Then of course we want to say return data as well. We want to grab this data because we will be needing this later on. Save this. If I refresh here now, you will not see a chart here. Alright, so we are missing some constant declarations here. So let's see here, number 67. Alright, so we have this constant here, which makes sense. Of course, this here should be data equals an array. Makes sense, sorry. There we are. Alright, so we have this here, and of course right now I realize it doesn't work yet because we need to trigger it. So what we could do here, we can trigger this quickly. We can put in here just a quick button here, just to see what's going on here. On click, generate data, test. Alright, save that, and there we are. So once we test this, you can see we get 365 array values here, and everything is broken down. You can see here the date currently, or at least today, it is basically 20 September. So it starts here with plus 1, which is 365 days back. Alright, so this is fine. This is all nicely done here. This is all working. You can see that we have many arrays here up to 365 or 364, and the reason why is because we start at 0 here. Alright, so we've got this now. We have all of this. The next thing what I want to do is eventually start working with our item here, or basically with our data here. So we have all of this here, and then what I want to do is the following. We're going to say here our setup block, and then in our setup block what we're going to do here, because we have here already used the variable data, so this can be a conflict here, so maybe we can give this another name. Let's say data2. I'll just give it value number 2, because if we are going to use here the setup block, we're not allowed to use again constant data, and I prefer to use this. Alright, so if I save this now here, you can see here, alright, it's already been declared. Am I correct? Where are we now? Constant data. Do I have another data here somewhere? Oh, of course, that's this one here. Sorry. That makes sense. I'm going to remove this here for now. Or let's comment this out. And then we're going to work here now. So if I save this now, refresh, this all works. Click. Data push is not a function. Fair enough. Data push will be data push number 2. Do we have anything else with data? Data. Alright, so this is all correct. So now what we want to do here is just getting the chart working. So we're going to create here our data set. And then you say here data sets, and this is the following that we need here basically is, well, we're going to give it our basic information. So we have here the brackets. And then in here, we're going to give a label. Say a label, matrix or heat chart, heat map could be heat map. All right. And then what we have here for the data, and the data will be directly linked with what we have here. And this is on purpose because we have this large amount of data here. Well, it doesn't show here yet, but doesn't matter. We already show you that one. That's this one here. So once we have this one here, we say comma, and then we can give it a background color. Alright, so the background color must be a formula here, and this is the reason I use this specific value here, the V value. This V value here is a random number between somewhere in this, somewhere between 1 or 0 to 1 and then multiplied by 50. So there will be about 50 points. And this is necessary here, for example, for the amount of commits, and this will be eventually for the background color, how it will be darker or lighter depending on the amount of values we have here. The higher the value here, the darker it is, which makes sense. Alright, so what we're going to do here is the following. We're going to say here, our background color, I'm going to make this here variable, or we're going to put in here the C value, which is eventually matching here. We're going to try to grab this value later on. We'll loop through it. Alright, so then we have multiple different colors here in an array. And then we say here constant value equals C dot data set dot data number 2. Then we say here, oh sorry, not data number 2, data, because we're going into the data set, and then here because we're not going in there. And then we say here bracket C dot data index dot v. Alright, so where we're going to try to extract this specific value, loop it through, we'll count it, etc, etc. Alright, so this is still quite challenging because there's a lot of things in here. Next, what we want to do here is the following, which will be a alpha value, where we have a transparency. So we get the color, and then we want to have, of course, a transparency on here. So we say here alpha equals, and then we say here 10 plus the value, which is this specific value here. We're going to plus 10 this, and then we do this divided by 60. Alright, so that will determine here eventually what will be the transparency value, and the reason plus 60 is eventually we will divide that. We will get here, because this here it multiplies by 50, the maximum, if there will be 1 here, because it's from 0 to 1, it will be maximum 50 points. And here we do plus, so we get here a value somewhere again back into this, or from 0.0 up to 1. Alright, because there's a maximum of 1. Alright, so we have this here. The next thing what I want to do here is to return this value, and here we return, and I'm going to use here template literal, so I'm going to use a backticks. And then we say here the following. We're going to grab here the RGBA value, and this RGBA, I will just make it very straightforward. We're going to make a green color, so 0.200, comma 0. Now I said point, but it's comma here. And then we say a comma, and then here we're going to use the alpha value, which is this one here. So we have this one, and then we put in here the $sign with curly braces, and then we put in the alpha, which makes this a variable. Alright, so we have this now. The next thing what we should have here is eventually a border color as well. And the border color will be very straightforward. I'm going to grab this here, put in here, and then just say border color will be green. Very straightforward, nothing fancy here. Green. Alright, the next thing, once we have this, what we could do as well to give it a border radius, and make it a bit rounded, very similar to GitHub. So say border radius 1 pixel. Alright, that is of course 1 pixel. The border radius, sorry, that's not 1 pixel, I just have to say number 1. Alright, so we have 1 pixel, we have very slight rounded border. So then we have this. The next thing what we want to do eventually is here, we must make sure we have a border width. We put in here 1 pixel as well. Next, once we hover over this, we want to give it an effect. So we can say here hover background color, and this could be, we can highlight this. Let's say this will be blue, and it will be fine. And then of course what we want to do as well is we want to have here the hover border color as well. This could be blue as well. We could do maybe even here, instead of that, we could do an RGBA color. I'm just going to copy this, put it in here, we make this blue. Or what we could do is, well, let's grab our familiar red color, that would be nice. Just put it in here, and then next I'm going to copy this, put it in there, put in here number 1, because we want a solid alpha value for the border color. Alright, so now we have this here. What we need to do now, this is the most complicated part without any real explanation in here. So what is really happening here is we need to define the width of this. In this case, because we have 1 year value here, 365 days. And what we're going to do here eventually is we're going to break it down into weekdays. So we want every week, because we have here somewhere, if I'm not mistaken, it should be here, that's the one. We have 7 days. We want to make sure we have these 7 days. So we want this like the amount of weeks and then every day. So there will be from left to right will be the weekdays, which will be 52 or 53 weeks. And then from top to bottom, we will have 7 days from Monday till Sunday. So we have this width that we have to indicate here. So we say here the following width. Then we put in again a C value, which is our parameter. And the parameter will be then here the following. We'll say constant A equals C, which is the parameter chart. So we're going to define what this is. We say the chart dot chart area. Then we have to make sure this is like or blank. So this is the first one, just to avoid if there would be a blank in here. And usually this has happened in the first time initialization or loading. So, or if there's an animation in here, so it needs to load the animation first. And then we want to say here return the following here. We say a dot right, then minus a dot left. All right. So what happens here? We're going to get the chart area. So the chart area is in pixels. What we need to return here is basically the width of the chart area. Basically here what we're doing is just basically the width of the chart area. But to calculate that, you need to calculate the right pixel amount, how much is on the right side, minus the left side. If you want to understand this, I have videos about chart area. This is really important to understand, but for now I will just skip that. It's, as I said, this is a really tough one, but just follow along, you will get the result. And probably very soon I'll get more proficient with it, and then it will be easier to understand as well. So then we say here divide by 53 weeks minus 1. Alright. So we have this one here. So now we have defined here the width. So we can do the same here with the height, except for the height. We have to say here height. We have here the chart area, but then here we will say bottom minus the top. And here, of course, what we did here, remember, we had here 7 days. So you might say, okay, 53 weeks, why 53 minus 1? All right. Think about an array. Array starts at 0. So basically, 52 should be the ending point because 0 is an extra value that makes 53. All right. If not here, we basically have 54 length of blocks. All right. And this here, same story. We have 6, from 0 up to 6 is 7 values in here. So that's why we're skipping this one here. All right. So we have this now. We have all of this together. And then now what we can do is basically with the next item. All right. So what is our next item? We'll be focused on the scales. So the scales here is another part. So I'm going to remove this here. I'm going to make a new constant or new block. We call this the scales block. And this one, it will be also quite lengthy. And then in here, we say constant scales equal in the brackets. And then in here, we're going to work, because remember, we're working now with a time item. So we're going to work with time. So we say, first of all, the Y scale, we're going to focus. And then we have to indicate here basically the days. So we say here type equals time. And this is, of course, make sure you spell it correctly, and it's a string value as well. So the next thing we say offset, which is true. And I will check later on what this really does, because I know there's like space between them. With the offset, you put space between the top and the bottom, or left and right, depending on which scale you're talking about. In this case, the offset will be on top and bottom. So there's some space between every item itself. So next, we have here indicate the time, which is this item here, this object basically. We're going to break it down here now and be more specific what it is. So we say units, and the unit will be here in day. So how many days are we using? Next, we want to say we want to round it. We round it into the days itself. Then we have the ISO week. We're going to start calculating from week number 1. And then we have the parser, and then I'm not yet familiar with what it is, but basically it's parsing the values. How will it be parsed? And for this, I only have an I. I will eventually look and research this more deeper. So for now, sorry about it. Just follow along. Then we say here display format, or format, sorry, with an F and an S here. Then here we say the day, and this we will indicate here. We can say the triple item, or we can do 6. Then you grab as much as possible details. In our case, probably 3 will be able to read, but you can do one or the other. what it eventually shows, this one shows the days, and if you have more like 6, you will show more characters or more values. What exactly? It's not clear on the scale as well, so I can't say so far. So once we have this, we need a comma here. And then what we're going to do here is basically going to reverse. And this reverse equals true. And then what we need to do here is the following. We're going to grab here the position. We have this, we say here the position. We want to position the scale eventually to the right. And the reason why we want to put it on the right, we want to put the days, so basically here the values will be, the scale will push here to the right side so we can see here the days. We don't want it here. Alright, so this is very important. And then here next, we're going to work on the ticks. So the ticks here, same story, same max rotation. And we say here 0. And then what we're going to do here, comma, and we say auto skip. True, comma. So we want to skip here certain things. We want to skip certain values from the array, or from the ticks on the Y scale. Very important. And then we say here padding, some space between there, let's say 1 pixel, comma. And then we say here font, and put it here, size will be 9 pixels. Alright. So once we have this here, we can put a comma here, and I just realized that maybe it would make far more sense to start drawing this first. So what I want to do is, before we even continue on here, let's go and work on the config here. Luckily for the config, it's quite straightforward. We have here a lot of information already. We can just adjust this. We say matrix. Say here matrix. This is the type of chart we have. Then we have here the data, which is correct. We have our data here because we have the constant here of data. And then next we have here the options here. Maintain aspect ratio. We have here the scales that is eventually matching with this. So to do this, I'm going to remove this here. Basically, we'll just say here scales equal scales, comma. And then once we have this here, what we could do as well, I think here, would be to remove the plug, or remove the legends. Well, let's first see if we get any response first. If I save this now, refresh. Alright, so we're getting some results. Of course, we don't get any results yet, but we definitely have to remove this here to make it look better. And I guess this button here can be removed as well. Because right now you could see if we refresh, it loads already. So let's do that immediately. I'm going to remove the button here. So we don't need this anymore. It's obsolete now. Alright, so we have this. Let's remove the legend on top here. So say legend. Let me say here display. False. And what we could do as well is here maybe, well, later on, we can check with the tooltip what we would need and what not. So if I refresh again, alright, so it shows here this, you can see here now we get this, and probably if we can check this one immediately here, what do we see if we do 6 times here? We get here certain things, but I guess the value here probably will show you everything, but the value is not, we have not enough space for it. So in this case, we can ignore that. The offset here is this part here at the side. Alright, so we have this here now, and you can see we're still not even ready with drawing, so I guess we can continue on with the ticks here. So we're going here on the ticks. And once we're done with the ticks, we have the font size, we can put a comma here. What I want to do the next one is eventually the grid. Grid here, and then here we're going to say, because we have the grid lines here, and these grid lines have no value now. So we can say here, for this display, false. And then if I save this now, we can refresh, you can see here, alright, what we need to remove is also these lines here, so we could say here as well, comma, and we say here, draw border, false, refresh, alright, so there's no more borders, so probably eventually we need to remove that from the Y, well, this is the Y scale, we remove everything from the Y scale, but we also have to remove from the X scale. So the next one will be the tick length. We can put in here 0. If we save this here now, what eventually happens, you can see here there's no more space here, or at least that space here between is all removed. So now we have this. Of course, the next part will be we're going to work on the X value. And here we have the same, almost the same structure here as well. So what we're going to do here, x scale, and we're going to say first one is a type, indicating time, because we need to specify the time object, comma. Next, what we want to do is we want to position it. Right now, we have the position here at the border. I guess basically that's already fine. So it's already in here, but we just want to make sure. Say position border, although it's already down by default, but just to make sure. The next thing what we want to do here, offset, and then we say here offset will be true, comma. If I save this here, refresh. Alright, so we're getting now something here. Of course, we're not getting everything here so far, but it starts to work and we're starting to get something. Alright, so of course we're not done yet. Let's continue on. We have a lot of work to do more. So we have the offset, which is true. Then the next thing what we need to do here is to specify the time object. So in the time object, it probably will be very similar to what we need, but except here, instead of days, because remember here we had the days, we're going to do here the weeks. So we say here the unit, and the unit will be week, comma. And then we say here, we round it on the week as well, because we don't want to on the full weeks. Then next we will say here, ISO weekday, meaning we want to start the weekday on Monday, so we say here number 1. Alright, so remember what we did here before. Eventually we want to start it with number 1. Let's see here, this part here. So once we have this, then we say here display formats. Alright, and then here it will be, how are we going to display the information? Well, we're going to say we will be in weeks. Oh, this will be in week, but the week format will be, instead of I like that we had here, specifying the day, we want to do here M, and then delta. Alright, so month, and we have here the day, I guess that will be the week or the week number. Doesn't show here so far. Alright, so we have to still work on this, because something here is still not showing. It will probably be related to the grid lines, I realize. That's still not done here. Alright, so what we're going to do next one is eventually, and I realize, oh, that's probably the reason. Position border, it should be position bottom. So if we have this, there we are, here we have it. Alright, so this is quite long here. Maybe we can cut this out, but we can see later on. However, it starts to look quite nice anyway. So what we're going to do here, the next one is eventually the following. We're going to look at the ticks. So because we have here like a lot of ticks, and probably we can remove certain ticks to make it look more better. So we say here, comma, and then we do the ticks. And then we say here, max rotation. Did I by all means, alright, I forgot to rotation. This should be also correctly. Max rotation. I guess I don't know exactly what happened here. Rotation. Am I missing something? That's alright. For now, I'll just leave this for now. I don't know why. Rotation. Am I having a misspelled item here? So refresh here. Max rotation is not defined. Oh, of course. Sorry. We're not defined here, of course. So that's why it gives an error. So in here, max rotation, and then what we have to do here, put it 0. So we don't want to rotate anything here in the ticks. So if I refresh here, everything back, you can see here the rotation is going back into a straight line. Perfect. And of course, that's why we probably have to skip certain ticks to make it more readable. However, we're getting there, very close. We're very close now here. So we say here, auto skip, to skip certain values as well. Auto skip, we say here, true. Okay, save this here, you will see. Alright, so if anything need to be skipped, it should be here, that's fine. Then next, we want to reduce the font size here, very similar to this, because this is here too big. So we say here font size. Font. And then we say here size, 9 pixels. So once we have this, I guess we are here done. If I save this, refresh, there we are. So we have this one now, final item here. Alright. So we go here, we have this, oh, no, we don't need to have this one, but we need to go here to the grid lines, because we're going to remove now the grid lines here. So to remove the grid lines, very straightforward, grid, Then here, display false, comma. And then we can say here, do we want to remove, oh, no, I don't want to save that. I want to save this file. Refresh, we can see we did have removed here the grid lines, but the border line is still not removed. So we say here, draw border, and then we say here, false. And then once we did that one, finally, we can say here the tick length. And with the tick length, we can put in 0. If I save this now, let's see what happened. It will be nicely, so you can see what is happening basically. So refresh. Probably there's some space here between, and then if we do this, it's going back, there we are. So we have no more space between here, all the ticks, so there's no extra space. So alright, so now we have everything here, and this is, to be honest, is really tough. And I have my notes in here, because this is really hard for me as well. And it's a quite extensive topic. But basically, we have this one, and I was planning to make one with an API, but it's far too complicated, because I still need to study this from top to bottom. However, here we have everything, and you can see here, the reason we did here the reverse, let's go back here on the reverse. I cannot find that one. I'm surprised I can't find that. Because we had it. Reverse, where are you? Alright. Reserve. Okay, sorry. Reverse. I'm thinking probably of too many financial terms. The reserve, financial reserves, etc, etc. Alright, so look what I did here. So if I do this, this was reverse. Alright, if I save this, I put this here. You can see here later on. Save that. Pay attention here. Do I see that? No, I didn't even notice. Or is it the date? I guess it's specifically the dates. Let's try again. So we have here now 19 September, and this is 19 September as well. Alright, so if I refresh here, 19 September as well. Alright, so I'm not able to see exactly here what am I missing here. It's on the Y scale, so it should be somewhere here. Although I was expecting this here, but fair enough. But this is basically how we can create an item here. And here having 100 pixels is probably more than enough. You could make it bigger or smaller if you want, but if you make it too big, it will not be very appealing. So, but let's look at it. So if we do this one to 200 pixels, save that, refresh, you can see here now it starts to become a rectangular. And while it's quite nice, because you can see if I refresh, you can see the background color is starting to show up here. Let's see, you can see here that these, you can see here this was just a bit light, and this was now light, just it was dark. We'll refresh again, this now becomes darker. Alright, so you can see this works every time because we're refreshing. However, this here would not be recommended. Just get it like this. It will be probably the best one, so we have a nice GitHub style. This is extremely well. This is a really long video, and I had to really focus on my notes at the same time. Very hard. I will be making more videos about this because I truly love this. It's absolutely phenomenal to see how this works. However, to understand this, it requires a lot of knowledge, and very soon I will go deeper and deeper in this and break it down into more topics about this. So, but if you do have any questions regarding this, put them in the comment section below. And next, of course, if you're interested in something else, I would highly recommend the data structures. Basically what we did here, let's go back here, is a data structure, is creating a very similar to a data structure. So if you want to understand basically why we did that or what we did there, check out this one here, because this here works with data structures where it eventually parses data as well. Very useful, because we could do here like this v value could be basically a commit word, or a commit, we could even do here like commit, and we could do so much more. So I highly recommend. The link will be popping up somewhere here right now, so you can click on it to explore this specific topic.